on the July 2025 What's Neat.
Going to continue layout construction. There's a lot of work to do, a lot of track to lay.
The What's Neat Show is sponsored by Lombard Hobbies, your value hobby shop for over 40 years of modelers helping modelers. Big inventory, value pricing, fast shipping, and great service. And by Broadway Limited Imports, the cutting-edge leader in model trains. Check out their website at broadway-limited.com. And by Bachmann Trains. Now that's the way to run a railroad. Check out their website at bachmanntrains.com. And thank you for helping us support the best hobby in the world.
This is What's Neat for July 2025. I'm your host, Ken Patterson, and this month we are going to continue layout construction. There's a lot of work to do, a lot of track to lay, and a lot of the process, and we do, at the end of this video, get a train to run on the layout, which is a blessing. The woodwork came out great, the trackwork is just coming out beautiful, and I really enjoy readers' comments, as folks have been saying that they've been enjoying these segments of What's Neat, where it's just nothing but getting your hands dirty and trying to get things done. Also this month, I've got some really beautiful models that I've got to share with you. I'm going to start with this Broadway Limited Imports big boy locomotive. This is 4014. I shot this puppy outside, and this thing is gorgeous. This thing is heavy. It's got great sound in it. It's got that Paragon 4 sound in it. It's got all the detail that you would expect to find on 4014. It was a surprise. I was very pleased to see this locomotive, and I've got to share these images with you. Plus, at the end of this show, that is the locomotive that will be the first model run on this layout in over 3 months as we test all the track work, an important thing to do, obviously, when you're working on a layout. I also have got some beautiful models from Bachmann Industries. Now, are these beautiful? I've got a lot of gorgeous photographs to show you of these. This is the new die work for the BL2 locomotives. Branch line. That's what the BL stood for in the word BL2. EMD built these. I've got two, one in Maryland Western and one in Monon. And I'm showing you images of all of these shot outdoors. The lines on these things are absolutely exquisite. Although the reason for that was, they originally built these on the F3 framework. But they were trying to design a locomotive unlike the car body of an F unit, where you could actually see around the front and the back for doing switching work. And that was the goal of this locomotive. It didn't work out so well simply because access to the motor was difficult, mechanics on it were difficult. But it was a learning curve for EMD, and Bachmann Industries did an absolutely beautiful, exquisite job on these models. Both models were different that you're looking at in that they've got different body details on them. I believe the ones I've got here are DCC ready. Just absolutely exquisite. Check them out. Of course, you can purchase all of these wonderful models at Lombard Hobbies up in Chicago. Check them out on their website. I know they've got a ton of Broadway Limited stuff and a lot of Bachmann things to look at. And so with that, please be sure to check out the What's Neat This Week video podcast that we produce down here every Saturday night, keeping you updated on a weekly basis on what's new in this industry, what's new in our hobby, the best hobby in the world, the hobby of model railroading. And so with that, let's continue on with the rest of this July 2025 What's Neat. We now continue with our regularly scheduled broadcast, Layout Construction, Part 4 on What's Neat. We're going to pick it up right now where we just left off. Turning my attention to the module that goes into this section right here. Now that everything has been laid into position and it's just sitting here, nothing's been screwed down yet, everything just fits just right. This piece will fit right in there just like this. Perfect. I like the way that turned out. So now it's time to take the module, and I brought it over here into the shop. And I put it on the big table here. But because the module's so long, it doesn't fit the 6-foot table. And I've got a square on it. And I'm squaring up this end before I do the final cut on that. This module's got to slide in and out of place. And in order for it to do that, I need to have at least 1/8 of an inch or possibly even up to 1/4 of an inch space to get the module in and out easily, because all the woodwork will be screwed down, the 3/4 inch wood we just did. So anyway, I've got the line measured out here, and I just drew a line. And what that's going to do is allow me to put a 1/4 inch fascia on the end of this. That'll give me a nice smooth end to help facilitate sliding the diorama in and out. It'll add structural integrity to it, like I do when I wrap all of the foam modules with plywood so they don't warp. I mean, this is a very long module. It's better than almost 10 feet long. And it's holding its own firmness, even though the table itself, as you can see, has got a warp in the table. It's just got a little 1/4 of an inch difference. So I've got it set up square here on the end, and I'm simply going to take my Stanley Sureform planer and saws and cut this foam down now, so that it'll accept this piece of plywood and have plenty of space. I don't know what the topography is going to be in this area yet. I know the main lines are coming in level off of the plywood perfectly, but where the engine house is that I've got in mind for right here, I might want that topography to be a little bit lower than the main line is. So that'll mean that the end plywood that actually gets built for this end will have topography cut into the end of it to match the foam. And therefore, since I don't know what that's going to be yet, I don't want to make the final cuts on the plywood yet. So I just am going to cut the foam down, put it back into place, and see what's next with regards to squaring up this whole thing and getting ready to put plywood all the way around it. I don't know where to put the plywood control panels. What I'm saying is I don't know where to put the block switches yet on this diorama, so I can't do the final piece of fascia for this until I know where the blocks go, so I can pre-cut the square holes to accept the switches. Okay, so that's what Ken's doing at 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock here in the morning, coming along. It looks like I've got about 7 days in this project so far. 2 days of polyurethaning and staining, and a few days of planning. It's coming along quite quickly. I'm sure it's going to take another couple of days to lay track. I'm using a square on top of here. Also got a metal square on the side with sandpaper on this. So after I get this cut made, which is almost finished, I'm going to take this and slide it back and forth to square up and make a smooth side. You've seen me do that when I built a trestle diorama in the past. When I built like your trestle. And that diorama was about 7 layers of foam thick, and I had to square that up all the way around the curve, and it works beautifully for that. A big piece of steel with sandpaper on it does wonders. Look at that. squaring up the edges of this diorama so that I can put on this piece of wood on the end that I explained. That'll help facilitate this thing sliding in and out perfectly into its spot, and it's going to dress up this side and look really nice. I don't know the final contours or what the topography is going to be here, but I'm thinking it may be best to just go ahead and put the piece of wood on. I can always change the topography later by using a laminate bit in the router and running it down and contouring the topography with that. You've seen me do that many times in previous videos, and it simply works. Another set of tools that I like to use for squaring up the sides. I got this angle block that I picked up at a garage sale once. I had been using this tool for 20 years. It's very invaluable. And on one side of it, I went to the Home Depot and the commercial rental department, and I grabbed some of this red sandpaper for sanding discs, great big discs. And they also have it in square sheets. And I glued it onto this block. And what I like to do is on this table that's completely level, I can put this right up to the edge of the diorama. And then I can slide it back and forth. And that gives me completely square, smooth foam carving. You can see as I've done this here, maybe you can't from your camera angle. The lighter foam are the areas that were higher up that I took off. Everything right now is perfect. It's relatively smooth and square on both sides. Another tool that I like to use to help facilitate this is this long automotive sanding 17-inch inline sander. I think I picked this up at the Harbor Freight. Very inexpensive tool, but very valuable, especially on the top when I'm doing track work and there may be an uneven section of foam. This thing is just beautiful for smoothing out unevenness. It also is very useful for the sides. So now what I want to do is this, and you've seen me do this in previous videos. In the old days, I would simply attach this to the side of the foam with liquid nails. That's how the back plywood on this is attached. If I were to do it all over again, I would simply use the polyurethane water mixed Gorilla Glue. That stuff is amazing. That would hold this. But to ensure that during movement outside, sliding it around on top of dioramas or carts outside that may be uneven, I don't want to take a risk of the plywood catching and maybe tearing off or coming loose on the diorama. That can happen. So what I'm going to do is I cut some dimensional lumber 1x4 stock, and I ran it to the bandsaw, and I made small 1/2 inch, almost square blocks of wood. Okay, I've got my router set up so that I can put this right here on the foam. The fence on the router is set up to give me a groove dead center. Okay. You've seen me do this in previous videos, and in fact there's a piece of wood right here, and there's another couple of pieces of wood over there, dead center, but there isn't any on this part of the diorama or on the end. So I want to run this router around from the top, and then what I'll do is I'll put these blocks of wood into the channel that I routed out. That'll give us something to then be able to staple the pieces. Boom, boom, boom. I can staple this into the blocks of wood that are securely glued in with Gorilla Glue into the groove, and that will give me ensured stability, that if anything catches or pulls on the edges, this will not come out. If that comes out, the diorama is going to be toast anyway. So that's the process. I'm not going to put the fascia on the front of this yet until I get the track laid on top and I know where I think I might want to put the block switches. Okay? So here we go. Let's continue on and see how this project continues. So now I'm using a router with a vacuum cleaner helping to suck out the loose foam as I'm routering out the groove into the side of the module that will accept small pieces of wood that will give us the attachment point for the plywood. When the beautiful plywood's put on the sides, this really ensures, I used to just glue this in the past, but this works so much better than glue because the staples into the wood, into the module, really helps. Measure 3 times and cut once. Okay, so what I've done now, I've got everything squared up. I explained about the foam. I've also cut a few pieces of wood to use as my guide. Everything's square. I also cut one piece of wood instead of the individual blocks. Just one piece. Fits perfectly in my routed groove. I want to put some Gorilla Glue in there in a minute and some water and let that set. And I've also cut a piece here that will fit perfectly in between the two outside parts. See that? Perfect. So once the Gorilla Glue's on the inside piece, I will then staple this to it. And I'll put the module back in place over there. And at some point I'll work on the front fascia when I know what the topography is going to be. So yeah, rock and roll. Getting a lot of work done here in this work session. It is 7 o'clock in the morning. Okay, I'm going to attach the end to the module. The glue in this is already set up. This Gorilla Glue works. We're going to use a little bit of that on this too. I'm going to wet the nice piece of plywood here. I'm going to wet the foam. And put on a little glue. And this will expand and fill any gaps. I love this stuff for just this. Okay. Put it in position here. And staple it in place. Look at that, it's perfect. And one right here on the end. And then I'll go back and fill these holes with a little bit of wood putty right now. Look at this. Okay, already set. It's slippery because it's got polyurethane on it. Go. One more. Just like that. How about that? The wood end is on. I've sealed everything in latex paint on the side. The top, I put the latex paint on very light, simply to kill the color of the pink foam. It makes it easier to see the topography when it comes time to start carving things down, coming off the roadbed for the Trackwork. So now what I want to do is put this into place. I'll put it on this roller cart and roll it into position. All of the woodwork is sitting in place, not screwed in place, just sitting there. That's how well everything is fitting. I love the lines on this piece. So I'm going to put this diorama back into its home right here and screw all of the plywood and all this into place. And at that point, we can start figuring out the track work on this. Okay, I'm putting in the final piece of trim right here. And the triangle here, everything lined up perfect. I think that's good. Everything's level. All the transitions between each piece of wood is smooth. I'm very, very pleased. Everything is now screwed down into place. All the brackets are secure. And during all this construction, laundry still manages to get done. The transition between the module, everything is just perfect. There's no complaints about this. I might put in an angle piece of trim, get rid of the puck lights and drop in a row of small LEDs to light up that area. I love the lines on this curve. I mean, it's just beautiful without track. It's kind of cool. And I'm going to start on the shelf and have that all built so I get the scenery products out. That's going to be 4 foot by 8 foot deep. It's going to be beautiful. Here's the way the module looks in place. Fresh canvas, ready to lay track on. All the markings. I always sealed it with a little paint just to kill the glare of the pink foam. So at this point, it's really time to start laying track, figure out the fascia, figure out where the blocks are going to go, and get it to the part where we can run some trains. Okay, to continue on with laying track now, I've got a full box, about 280 feet of microengineering Code 83 track, so that I can build the switchyard for the passenger trains that we're planning down the road. And we're going to lay track on the scene. I want track laid on the scene in 2 hours. That's doable. Now, normally you just got back from the hobby shop and you bought your turnouts. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to reuse some turnouts. As I've explained on a previous show, I do like the Shinohara turnouts. These are number 10s that I've got in my hand right now that I've taken off of the 12-foot diorama that I've filmed almost every run-by I've ever filmed. Whether it's grain elevators or buildings in the background, I've always used this 12-inch wide by 12-foot long scene that had 3 tracks on it. Used to run across my window, but I've replaced that, so I've always used that for outdoor run-bys. When you've seen those on the show, that's what I was using. Anyway, it ended up pretty bad shape. I had it out on the front porch, and I decided to take it apart and salvage the turnouts out of it. It happens to have Shinohara turnouts on it. Like I said, these are number 10s. And as I've studied these, I've got my OptiVisor on so I can see. These turnouts, in fact, have isolated frogs. And I've noticed that at some Shinohara turnouts. I just would guess that it's depending upon what decade I got these turnouts that I used on my layout as opposed to the ones that are on the scene in front of me. Different styles of manufacturing over the years is all I can attribute that to, which is just fine. I can work around that. I want turnouts that have got live frogs. And these on this diorama that I built for a WHATS advertisement for Shinohara back around, I guess it was 1999 or early 2000s is when this ran in the catalog. As late as I think 2007. I found this in the doghouse. I'm going to take it apart. It's glued together with Elmer's white glue, thank you, which means that it's going to be very easy to soak this with a garden hose and pull all this track up. I don't believe I soldered this together. It's really hard to tell because a lot of the rail is so green I can't tell. But if I didn't solder it, it'll come apart. If I did solder it, I'm going to take the Dremel, I'm going to notch it out before I pull off the turnouts, because it's a lot easier to pull rail joiners off one at a time with a hot soldering gun when you're salvaging turnouts like this, as opposed to trying to heat up both rails at the same time and pull the turnout apart. Unless you're using two soldering guns or you got a friend helping you, it's nearly impossible to get both rails hot enough at the same time to successfully pull the turnout apart. And what you end up doing as you're trying this is you're melting ties and just further kind of dilapidating what it is you're going to have to rebuild to reuse it. So right now, outside with this, I'm going to soak it. I'm going to bring it back in. I'm going to take all this track apart. We're going to lay them out where they belong over there. And we're going to start laying track and have a train running here in the next 3 hours. Did I say 3 hours, 2 hours? We're going to have it running tonight. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to let these soak for probably 30 minutes. And then we'll come back and start dissecting this. It's a little more easier to use a spray bottle and water here. I'll have ample amounts of water. So the turnouts have been soaking for half an hour, and I'm using a putty knife to dig underneath the ties and loosen up the Elmer's glue, which is coming up super simple. I cannot tell still whether these are soldered together or not. I put a soldering iron on them and I wire brushed them. I don't believe they are. But over time, these things really don't want to come apart. And I've been using a Dremel cutoff disc to cut right at the rail joiner. Freeing up the turnouts. Now, these turnouts are in pretty rough shape. I'm going to put them in the ultrasonic cleaner in a sink and wire brush off this dirt. I'm also going to have to get off these rail joiners on the end. So these are going to require some preparation. Plus, I can confirm that these are in fact all the way through to the points solid rails, solid frogs. So that means I'm going to need to, like I've shown you on video before, I got B-roll of this. I'm going to notch with the Dremel right here and right here on these two center rails, the inside rails. And then I'm going to put jumper wires from the outside rail to this outside rail. And we're going to go from this rail to that rail. And I've got video clips of this where I've shown how to do that. I've got to do prep to these turnouts in order to make them DCC friendly for us. And I also got to, since these have never operated, I'm also going to have to work on the points because these points are not sliding freely. They're all glued tight. So a little prep work on these turnouts. I can see that's definitely in the cards. So maybe not laid track in 3 hours, but let's just do it right. So now I'm cleaning those turnouts. This is day 2 now. I've put them in the ultrasonic cleaner right here. And let me show you this. Right now I've got the number 8s soaking in a bath of warm water. And when I took the turnouts off the diorama, what I was left with was all of this white glue and ballast in between the ties. Never mind the green rails, that's fine. And I've got the number 8 soaking, and what the ultrasonic cleaner is doing is it's helping to vibrate and loosen up all of the material that's stuck between the ties. And then what I've been doing is I've been coming over here to the sink, and I'm using a painter's comb, which is a brush for cleaning paintbrushes. I'm using the brass brush, and I'm literally, see if I can get this on film. I'm literally sitting here and just going through turnouts and removing all that crud from in between the ties. And I'm being relatively gentle about this because I don't want to break these turnouts any more than the damage that's already appeared. Some of them have got the points where they've come loose, not on this one, but I've got loose point rails here that have fallen off of some of these turnouts, which is easy to fix. I just resolder them. But taking the brush and going through them slowly with the water, what I end up with is this. Here's a number 10 that I did last night. So this is clean, and I can start laying these out. I still got to put the jumper wires in like I mentioned before, and we're going to do that too to make these DCC friendly. But so far, rock and roll. This is working out really good. Again, it's the second day of doing this, so it's probably going to be a 3-day deal to get this actually laid into place. But let's keep going. Okay, this part's kind of fun. What I want to do before I lay the track, I want to know exactly where I'm laying it. Now, of course, we drew lines on that end over there on the very end on the foam, as you recall, to mark where the main line comes in. But I also need to mark how the main line is going to come off of this module right here, okay? And that track is coming off of the module at an angle, so I'm going to have a gentle curve right here as I go past the road, and as soon as I get past the road, I want my first turnout ground throws and my points to be, okay? And I've got the switch position. I'm going to turn off this light now. I've got a laser set up on the jib crane over here. Not a tool everybody has, but if you've got a tripod, you can certainly make something. I'm using a cell phone clamp to clamp this laser because it doesn't fit my tripod like you think it might should, but it doesn't. And I've got the red laser set up right here on the curve where the plywood intersects with the foam and the main line track would be. And so that red line, I'm going to take a Sharpie and draw a black magic marker line right on that red line, which I do have lining up now to some of the turnouts that aren't repaired yet, but it gives me an idea of how these number 10s are going to lay out. So, wow, what a cool way to do this. Instead of using an 8-foot straight edge, I'm using an old laser that's been laying around here for about 15 years. It came in really handy for drawing the grades going up the wall when I had all the narrow gauge stuff down here. But rock and roll, so I need to take this laser and come off of each arc where I've got those markings on the end of the foam over there on the very end and just draw my lines. All 4 lines for all 4 different tracks. It'll be coming off of that. So that's self-explanatory, simple way to do it. If you don't have a laser, just use a straight edge. But I'm finding that it's going to be much easier to lay this out with a magic marker and then just match the track up to the lines. All right, so I'm just doing the final work to clean up the switches. You saw me wash them in a sink. Let me show you what I'm doing. This is really important. And we've covered this in previous videos, but it's something that I need to talk on this. These turnouts, I cut them out of the scene with the Dremel. So that meant that I had to go and pull off what was left of the rail joiners. And I did, in fact, solder all of this together when I originally built that diorama. So I'm using this Milwaukee. This is a wonderful tool. I think I've showed this off before. This is a battery-operated soldering iron. I've got 2 of these, one with a chisel point that I use for track work and one with a pencil point that I use for fine electronic work. I use that to pull off all of the rail joiners one at a time, just laying it down, putting a weight on the turnout, and then letting the rail joiner, half a rail joiner, get hot. And with a screwdriver, it just popped right off as it got hot. I also cut out the ties on the back, and I can show you this on this turnout right here. And as you can see, there are jumper wires on this. I used orange wires to make it easier to see it on video. And then I'll just go ahead and paint those black. But these are the jumper wires that bring the power from the outside rail to the outside rail on this, and the same way from the rail here to this rail right here. And then I cut with the Dremel a notch right here. That way the frog is powered by the points as the points make contact with these rails, okay? You don't have to do this to a turnout if you're just gonna end up in a siding. But if you have a situation where this switch will eventually down the road meet another turnout, where the lines are going to interact again, you will have a short if you don't do this to the turnout. Put those jumper wires in and notch it out. That's just the way it is. We did it to the narrow gauge layout, everything I've ever built in the past. And so I'm going to do that to this turnout, and I still have 4 more number 10s to do that to. And then at that point, we're going to be laying some track tonight. So this is the last night working on it. I think this is day 3. One thing don't forget is to clean your points, and that's what I'm going to do with this wire brush, because it appears that I painted these when I built this, and so this will get the paint off. I'm going to do it on each side. I'm being very gentle. A few of these turnouts have got the points where they came loose, and I'm going to have to fix that, but luckily this one is in good condition. And so I just go on both sides and work. And this is something you do on the layout constantly, is always keep your points clean to have your continuity. Especially if you haven't run your trains in a while. You know, say you don't run them every month, you come back with oxidized points. And that's good. Okay, here's a tip. How do you go from code 70 to code 83 rail? Well, you can buy rail joiners on the market that are designed to help you do that. But if you look here, I've got a pair of needle nose pliers, and I'm tweaking the code 70 rail up, and I'm pushing the 83 down. And what that's doing is it's loosening up the rail joiner just enough so that the rail tops match. And then what you do is you take your soldering iron, you tin it just a little bit, and you touch it on that joint. And now the joint's set, it's solid, and your rail height matches across the top, going from 70 thousandths to 83 thousandths. So just a little sandpaper across the top, and do that to every one of them, and you're off to the races with some smooth track joints. Okay, so I wanted to try an experiment here. I've got one of the brand new WHATS turnouts on my desk, and I was just looking at it a few minutes ago. And you know, I can give this comes with isolated frogs, okay? The frog, as you can see, there's a blank spot right there with plastic in it. And right here, as you can see, there's plastic insulating the frog, okay? And of course they give you a tab here so you can solder onto that or clip a wire to that and use this with a switch machine system that automatically would help you switch the polarity of the frog. Well, I like to have my frog powered by my points so that the electricity makes its conductivity right there. Gives me free flow all the way through the frog, completely powered. So what that would do is alleviate very small locomotives like a side rod Bachmann switcher or a 440 from stalling on that big 3-inch dead frog. If I'm using regular ground throws and I'm not using a switch machine that's going to power up this tab, which I'm not. I'm using good old-fashioned chooch ground throws next to my turnouts. So I came up with a solution, and I know this is going to work. See how that insulated gap is right there? Well, I cut out the plastic insert into this area, and I've exposed the rail, the frog rails, and see that? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and solder. I've got a small piece of brass right here, brass stock. And I want to take my tweezers, and I want to drop this piece right on top of those 4 pieces of metal, just like this. And then what that'll do is I'll hit it with some solder, and I'll attach that little piece of brass stock right there. That's going to power up everything for me in the frog from the points. But then what I've got to do is, if you look here, WHATS just installed jumper wires to go from the outside rails to the points, which would further enhance your conductivity if I wanted an isolated frog. So, because of these little jumper wires right here, I'm going to cut those. I'm going to have to take the Dremel and just simply slice that right there and slice that right there. Otherwise, I will have a short. And then, with this piece of brass soldered into place, my frog will be live when my points are set. So this is the only turnout I have that's a number 10 WHATS, and I'm going to install it on the end of the passenger siding on the layout that we're building right now, the section over the shelf. And I just wanted to talk about this experimental turnout, what I'm doing. I know it's going to work. It's going to work fantastic. Okay, it's actually day 7 on this project. A lot of photo shoots and video editing later. I've spent most of my time over the past 3 days and nights rebuilding these turnouts, cleaning the points, taking off the rail joiners that were in fact soldered on, just doing a lot of work on those. There's a lot of things going on right now, and it's all positive. First of all, here are the turnouts that I did rework. I put in the jumper wires, which I've shown you how I've done all of that. And I've got these turnouts in position where they should go. And I've got them all soldered together, like I said I would do. And let me show you. Let me go up, right up the ladder. Look how straight that is. That's exactly how I wanted them to be, and that's why I've got them all soldered together, so that that's not going to move around, because that tree of switches is vital. I want that straight, I want it to be smooth, and that is perfect, coming right off of the main line. Now the rest of the tracks are just laid into position. It's all code 83 microengineering track, and it's not weathered track. I usually always use weathered track. And what a dream it is to bend this track. It is just bends fluid, easy, and it keeps its shape once I've got it set up the way I want it. I'm using the drawings here that we originally made when we started this project. And I'm using that to re-double check all the radiuses for these 4 tracks as they're going to come around that piece of wood. So I've reset up the tape measure on top of a tripod, and I actually took a Sharpie, and as I curved around for each one of the main lines, each one of the trackages, I took our beautiful stained wood and I drew lines on it, which will follow the track. This is going to give me my guidance. This is all of the answers to doing that. The 4 tracks that are running across the beautiful shelf are also just laid into position. I have been straightening that track with a straight edge. You can do it with your eye, but a straight edge just really takes all the guesswork out of it, so that when you lay these parallel lines together and you look up them from the corner, when they're all connected together, they should be relatively straight and smooth running through this area. I've got 2 turnouts here also that are repaired, a number 10 and a number 8. And this is, I think, the WHATS turnout, in fact, that I'm going to show you in this video how I modified that. So I made the frogs live. So I'm going to use that number 10 for the passenger track siding that runs along the wall and all the way around the curve. The other track switch that I've got is a number 8, and that one should run this track against the wall to what will eventually be some sort of something all lit up and beautiful. I don't know what business. It might be grain elevators, not sure. Now, I've got all the tape, or all of the track taped down on top of this wood on this end. And the reason for that is the most important thing, and you've got to eyeball this, is that when you come off of this module, which is coming off at an angle towards the wall, you want a very smooth curve. And that's what we've got. All of those curves are gentle, smooth, they tangent right off the main line into the curve that's necessary to parallel the wall. So it's just a matter of gluing this track down, putting in the N scale rail joiners on this Micro Engineering Code 83 track. It works really, really well. They are small and not too obtuse. I like N scale Atlas rail joiners when I'm doing this HO scale track. There's a lot more that still needs to be done. I just want to get this main line up and running. There's a lot I want to explain over here too as we're going through this. Let me duck under this tape measure. I've got a scale ruler. This is an old scale, HO scale ruler. Measures off by the feet in HO scale. And I create a distance between these turnouts. I don't have them all together tight like a stack of turnouts. I've actually put a 5-inch spacer and a 4-inch spacer into between the turnouts. Why did I do that? Because when the tracks come off of these turnouts, I want them, I'm following Santa Fe prototypes of 14 feet on center. Okay, so that's what I use this for. As I set this up, and I measured 14 feet on center of each, and that dictated where these turnouts, how the angle would to create the straight trackage that's going to flow past the train station and also into what will eventually be a small 2-track stub, maybe engine house of some type on that corner. So with all the track work in place, here's another thing. Let me show you this. This is part of the repair work on the turnouts. Well, a lot of these turnouts were set up where I had the ground throw on this side. Well, that wouldn't work with this trackage pattern now. So what I did was I actually took a piece of brass, I think it was like 20 thousandths brass and 20 thousandths styrene, evergreen styrene, and I sandwiched the two together and I attached it to the switch points, center throw bar that goes between the two switch points, okay? And so I've created a new ground throw mechanism with a hole in it that I can put my caboose ground throw onto. So what's going to happen next is I'm going to glue down this stack of switches, and I'm going to go very sparingly on the glue because I've discovered I use too much glue when I'm trying to sell this track. You could just forget about it. Once those switches are glued down, I'll start laying mostly the main line, okay? That's the center track that you can see that's the longest right here. I need to get that laid and around the corner and connected to the other side so that I can get this video out in a timely manner. This process isn't going to stop. We're going to keep filming as I got to continue this project. One last thing I want to talk about is this end over here, connecting to this module. Again, this runs at an angle towards the room, towards the walkway. So I had to have a very gentle tangent curve, right? Coming right off of this so that it would flow into the adjoining module, and the turnouts would then be pointed in such a way that they line up with the radius lines that we've got drawn on the end down there where we start going into the curve. So what needs to be done next is passenger track sidings, platforms, lots of lights. We've got to put a panel on this, a piece of wood all the way across to wrap the diorama. We've got to build a control panel with block switches and then make sure everything can be turned on and off in each main line. And then the aesthetic value of things, ballast, grass, topography. Is this area with the 2-engine siding house going to be a couple of feet lower than the main lines? I think it will be. So at this point, I'm just going to glue down this stack of switches. I'm going to put in the ground throws so that the turnouts operate correctly and get the main line up and running. And so with the next clip, if this works out, you will see a train running, right? Rock and roll. So I'm gluing down the track. I took a magic marker and I drew lines on both sides of the ties, but the odds are very good I would have been able to line it up perfect anyway. I'm using this interesting glue. It's ultra clear DAP. It comes in caulking tubes. I'm just experimenting with it, so I got a smaller tube of this. It says it dries crystal clear, non-yellowing. It's flexible, it's waterproof, and you can paint it, which means our ballast will stick to it, which is what we want. Now I didn't go, you keep the glue away from the switch points and anything that moves on the turnouts. Everything else is relatively fair game. I'm using a block of wood that I squeeze the material out on top of, and I'm using a Ross painter's knife here to get it underneath without having to lift up things too high. And I'm gonna go a little sparingly on these turnouts in the event that I ever decide to change this layout again. I can salvage them and use them. Yes, that is what I've learned from this video. So there's no magic to this. I just don't want any of this to come up, move around. As temperature changes, the rail gets warm and cold depending upon the season. It puts a great deal of stress on the track work. I've got an area in the switch yard that actually did pop up. And because the layout's been down for so long, I haven't fixed it. I've been just watching it. And I want to just check something to make sure that all of this stack of switches didn't just shift a little bit, because I think I felt it do just that. And I can check that with my rail joint gap here. And yes, everything moved about 1/16 of an inch. That's not good. It's lined up again perfectly. So far, perfect. So I'm going to go down this entire stack of switches. I've got 3 more to go down this way. And then once I have this set, I can put the ground throws on these turnouts and they'll be fully functional. I know I said I'd have a train running the next time you saw me. Everything's a process, and there's no processes you can skip here. This part's got to be done right. I mean, this dictates years of running the layout, so it's really good to do it right the first time. Is there such a thing as right and wrong? It's a process, and I know this works. That's all that counts. This works. I've also got this main line, it appears, soldered to the switch, so I'm going to go ahead and start gluing down both of these tracks. It makes me super nervous, because I'd like to straighten out the main line with the yardstick straight edge just to make sure I got it right. I did it with my eyes. It's not stressful. It's trains, right? That'll do it for this turnout. I'm going to put a yardstick on that main line before I continue. So make sure that's perfect. If anything else, if I want to salvage these turnouts, you know the foam's going to pull up. I could actually cut them out of the foam and then go back and re-scrape the foam off of them. But let's not think about rebuilding the layout until we get this one built. I'm bending the Microengineering Code 83 not weathered track around the curve. I said in the video how easy this stuff is to bend, but yet it still holds its memory and it retains its shape after you get the curve you want made. I love Atlas Flex Track. It works and it flexes like a snake. You can just flex it. It's wonderful. And it's easy to curve, super easy, but it doesn't hold its shape. And in a situation like this, when I'm trying to match these lines to the edge of the ties, I want it to be perfect, and I don't want any fluctuation. Now, with Atlas Track, you could tape it down or anything else like that. Never mind Microengineering Weather Track. We love the way it looks. I do, and I'm still using it for everything. But it is so much more difficult to bend because the weathering solution doesn't allow the tie spikes to slide freely as freely on the rail. But we've gotten good at that over the years. We really have. And it also holds its shape. So let me just show you how easy this is. I'm just using a few fingers, primarily my thumb and a finger. I'm creating a leverage point, and I'm just bending this straight piece, matching that line. And a lot of times, it's very useful, and I'm going to do that right now, to tape down this end right here. We'll have to cut those rails so they match perfectly, but if you tape this down, it'll keep the one end from moving. You can still steady it with your hand, but this ensures that the rail movement doesn't actually cause this to straighten out. I just want to match it as close as I can around the stack on this mainline line. Now, on the internet, in readers' comments, it was talked about how beautiful this wood is, and at the same time, why would you go to the effort to make the wood so pretty and then maybe cover it up with track and potentially ballast? I've done this before in a switchyard that I built about 20 years ago in the corner of the other side of the basement, and part of it is straight polyurethane because it's super easy to vacuum and clean after you get freight cars off of it. And the part where the guys spend most of the time in the workshop area where the trackage runs through that area, I did ballast that right over the top of the polyurethane. So there's no such thing as right and wrong. I love the way this looks in the event that it takes me, let's say it takes me a year down the road to decide to ballast this. At least it looks absolutely beautiful in the meantime. That's just me. Okay, so this piece of track is curved and it matches the line. Now the next thing I'm going to do is just eyeball it to make sure that this curve is smooth. There's no kinks in it, no jerks. I want an absolutely perfect French curve all the way throughout. Okay, this would be the golden spike, but I'm laying the last piece of track that is for the main line, which is the third track in on this shelf. And I've already got rail joiners on the turnout. So all we've got to do, and I've got rail joiners on the short piece of track here, so I can just slide them. Now I've walked all the way around the room in the last hour and cleaned all of the debris and slides and books and just miscellaneous freight cars off of the main line of this layout. I've got to run a track cleaner over the whole thing because again it's been about 3 months. And this rail joiner is slid on. So now we've got a continuous electrical continuity run all the way around the whole main line with the new section here now laid in track. There are no blocks cut. It's all powered, but I just really wanted to see a train run on this. Now I have been working very diligently to keep this line back here straight. So I straightened out each 3-foot section of track with a yardstick, which helped. It's better than the eye. But the last thing I've been doing is I took this little mirror, this plexiglass mirror, and I've been putting it inside of here because I can't get my head in there. And if you angle it just right, just like that, you look up it and you can literally see how straight the Trackwork is. I mean, I don't know if I can get this on film or not. Hold on, I got this. You look right up that Trackwork right there. Let me angle it for the camera. And you can see how straight it is all the way through. And it is, and that's what I want. And I can also put my head down there in the corner, which I could never do before. So I need to glue down these 2 turnouts once I get this track right here. Let me get this lens where I want it. Sorry about that. All right, so 2 turnouts here, number 8 and number 10. I want to glue those down, put in the ground throws, and as soon as the ground throws in, that'll give us switch point continuity. We can run a train on this and see how it does. About 6 hours since the last time I shot some video, I've been letting the track dry. What do I mean by that? I've got the track glued down with that clear glue, and I really want to talk about that before I end this video. But I've got weights on top of this. I've got a level on top of it. I also put in right here for the 2 turnouts, I put in the chooch, or the caboose, ground throws. Got them all mounted. It's really important to have that before I can run a train, because that's what will keep tension on the switch points. The switches that I'm using don't have springs in them. I've got the main line laid perfectly through the curve, and it's also weighted down. And all of the turnouts on this portion have now got their ground throws on them. And I've also went around the whole entire layout and cleaned off everything that's accumulated on it for the last 3 months. I still got to put in the lift out section at the doorway and put in these rail joiners right here. But this layout right now, as soon as I take the weights off, I obviously can't power up the track with those weights. It'll cause a short. As soon as I get those weights off, put a train on. I've also cleaned the track all the way around. For real, the next clip, you'll see a train running. Almost forgot. Let's talk about this glue. This STAP flexible, all-purpose, waterproof sealer. The thing I've discovered about using this now for the first time, yes, it dries clear, as you can see on this turnout right here, where I kind of made a mess, but you can see it. It does dry clear. But what I really have come to appreciate about it is I had a great amount of time to work with this, is what I'm trying to say. In other words, it took a long time to set up. That's why I've waited 6 hours for all of this to set up. But that's a beautiful thing. In the event that you're laying track and you're just not sure and you're trying to line things up and you got it glued down and, oh, I made a mistake, I got to fix it. This stuff could be a savior. A, it's clear, stuff sticks to it, you can paint it, but it also gives you work time. I didn't read the instructions, but check it out. The STAP Ultra Clear, it's definitely good for gluing down track and who knows what else. All right, so let me get the weights off this and let's get this railroad going. As you saw earlier in this video, this is that beautiful model that I photographed, this big boy from Broadway. I haven't seen this puppy run yet, so we'll get to do that together. I did not disengage the smoke unit on this. If there's a switch under here, I want to do that so I don't burn it out. So let me switch that real quick. And I'll come right back here on the video. Okay, I'm gonna leave the smoke unit on. I'll tell you why. They usually come with a little smoke in it, and if this does work perfectly, let's watch it smoke too. But when I run it around the room normally alone down here, letting trains run while I work, I will not let that smoke unit remain on. It's just not good for the units. Okay. Let me make sure the power's on. Okay. All right, I'm just gonna let this run. It's quite loud. Let's see what happens. It is smoking. Wow, check it out. That's a nice model. Now, if there's going to be any problems on this, we're going to see these problems together. The smoke effect is cool. And I just lost power, so we're going to have to clean these switch points. That's a fact. Let me take this camera off of the tripod. And I might put some rail zip, or I might just start this clip over completely. You have to clean those switches some more, huh? Okay. That's a beautiful model. Sorry for the rough camera work here. That's gorgeous. I'm gonna get on the inside because I've always wanted to try that and stand inside and see what kind of a shot we can get. Oh wow, look at that. Oh my gosh, let's enjoy this after all that work. Here, pour a cup of coffee and watch a run by with me, real time. Is this the best hobby in the world or what? Check that out. Look at the headlight on that polyurethane. Should I balance this? Probably. This locomotive's a little work of art. And it's running. Am I blurring out here on this video a little? Here, look up this main line, how straight, how beautifully straight that is, all the way up. I can't get the camera, hold on. Right about up there, you're lined up. Now the question is, will it make it to the next two turnouts, or do I need to clean those switch points further as well? You just gotta tweak them. This is the very first time anything on this track has been run. So after all that work, I have to hang out and see this with me. This engine's gorgeous. I'm gonna have to tweak the connection between the tender, it appears. And I can do that. Look at the lights. All right, we're coming up on tour turnouts here. Don't embarrass me. Let's see this work. The sound system sounds really nice on this model. Look at that, no headlight flash. So these turnouts are good. We're rock and rolling on that. Oh, what happened? I don't know, but I'll get in there and tweak them. I'll just work on the turnouts and tweak them one at a time. Run something forwards and backwards, right? And now we come on to the track work that we know does work. This is a great way to end up a video where you guys get to hang out with me literally and just sit with me as we build stuff. What's neat? This is what's neat this week right now, I would say. Thank you for watching this section of layout construction. I've got the main line running. We can run the circles down here now. That's great. In future episodes, there's a lot more to do. Ballasting, fascia, blocks, scenery, trees, lighting. We're going to light up that train station. And I'm going to do an ITLA kit. There's a beautiful train station I've got with this great big tower on the end. I don't recall the name of it. But we're going to build that and put that there as well. It's going to be beautiful. Okay, I can't end it like that. What does it mean when I say I'm going to tweak the switches? After you got them laid down and they're not working quite correctly because switch points are dirty or other anomalies. So here's what I do. I've got a Bright Boy. This is a great big nice Bright Boy. Microengineering sells these. I think they're like $3 or $4, but these are nice. They last a good 5 years before they get hard. And I ran this across all the track work, okay? I've done that once, but I just did it again. Also in the switch points, I like these files. This is a diamond file. I don't know if you can see this on video. This file has got to be about a 32nd of an inch wide, okay? You get these at train shows. You can probably find them at Micromark. And what I do when the power's off in the rails, I filed right here, the inside. Hold on, let me show you this. I filed on the outside of the switch points here, okay? And I filed on the inside of the rail. So I've got good, clean conductivity, okay? It doesn't hurt. You can put a little rail zip on that. That would help with conductivity. Also, another thing I like to do, I'll take a pair of needle nose pliers, and sometimes I'll take the tips right here, the very tip of the point, see that? And I'll bend that outward so that as you flip the switch, it makes better contact with the rail, giving my electricity that will then run through the frog and carry the train all the way through. So, let's end this What's Neat video by watching this big boy run. I've got the sound turned off in it, and I've got the smoke unit off in it. And I just want to hear it run. I want to see its performance. I want to just make sure everything does exactly what we want it to do on these turnouts, so we don't end this video showing the train stalling on turnouts, right? So let's see what happens. This thing runs, by the way, sweet as can be with no sound. I love this model right now. I'm going to definitely put this through its paces. Look at this go through that switch. Smooth. Look at that. Don't stall, baby. Don't embarrass me. And we're going through the next turnout. And those long number 10s, that's beautiful for the main. Okay, rock and roll. Right. So thank you one more time for letting me come into your home and show you how I build this layout in my home, in my studio. And that truly is this segment for What's Neat.
All of the products seen on this episode of What's Neat are available from Lombard Hobbies in Lombard, Illinois, or order online at lombardhobby.com. And by Broadway Limited Imports, the cutting-edge leader in model trains. Check out their website at broadway-limited.com. Bachmann Trains. Now that's the way to run a railroad. Check out their website at bachmanntrains.com.